Mild and transient is a useful phrase for pharmaceutical professionals. Mild means nothing serious or severe, and transient means lasting a short time. I've found mild and transient an invaluable phrase when discussing the side effect profile of a drug. Here are a few examples. There may be a slight transient tingling sensation at the site of the injection. The post-op swelling will be mild and transient. Number 3, most patients report only mild and transient side effects, such as slight fatigue or a headache. Subjects in the trial reported only mild and transient muscle soreness after taking the drug. And number 5, finally, metformin, a first-line medication for type 2 diabetes, is associated with mild and transient gastrointestinal issues. Today's phrase is which means that.
Which means that a single...
Which means that
Which means that...
Which means that is an extremely useful phrase in pharma. It's a transitional phrase that ensures that we don't forget to mention the benefits of the drug. Here are some examples. The drug has a low side effect profile, which means that patient compliance is good. So it means that the patient won't simply stop taking the medication, sometimes without even alerting the HCP. The treatment has been granted orphan drug status, which means that it receives development incentives. The new formulation is enteric coated, which means that gastric irritation is not an issue. The surgical procedure is minimally invasive, which means that recovery time is much quicker. Today's phrase is much of a muchness. Much of a muchness means that there's little to no significant difference between two or more things. For example, we might say, in efficacy, the 3 drugs were much of a muchness.
Historically, they're kind of much of a muchness, and yet...
They're probably much of a muchness, and I think
you were all much of a muchness.
Much of a muchness.
This might sound like an odd phrase, but I found it extremely useful when dealing with price. Just say that your drug is the most expensive or the second most expensive in its class. Often it's useful not to shy away from price, but to address it head on. After dealing with efficacy and tolerability, mention that the price is much of a muchness with others in its class. Make sure that you've worked out the daily cost of your drug beforehand. This way, if you're pressed, you can say it works out to only 47 cents extra per day. 47 cents a day sounds much gentler, more palatable than 15 or 30 euros a month extra. So you'd say, our treatment has excellent efficacy, it has a low side effect profile, and it's much of a muchness with others in the class. So wouldn't you agree that much of a muchness is a useful phrase in pharma, especially when dealing with price?